Huge sale at thefoop.com starts 420. Buy two, get one free. Everything site-wide at thefoop.com on 420. You'll hear about it later in this episode. Greetings, cultivators from around the world. Jordan River here, back with more GrowCast. Consistency is key. Today we have Dr. Coco on the line. So excited to have Dr. Coco back on the show. And today we're going to be covering a couple of things that we've discussed on the show before, and then some more. We're digging in a little bit deeper on this recap. We're talking about keeping climate controlled. We're talking about moving your plants. We're talking about Dr. Coco's Grow, and a lot more. I know you're going to love today's episode. Before we jump into it, though, shout out to Sustainable Village. Blue mats are on sale. Code GrowCast for 10% off. The best automated watering system you can find. Turn your living soil grow into an automated grow. Go to sustainablevillage.com and use code GrowCast for 10% off your Blue Mat watering system only through April. This code is a limited time. You guys know I love the Blue Mat system. I'm going to get my bed set up again. I'm so excited. This is the watering system that detects pressure automatically. No pumps required. You can gravity feed it. No funny drip emitters or anything like that. Just these brilliant little carrots that will turn your soil grow into an automated grow. Check it out, sustainablevillage.com. Give them a call if you need a quote or a setup designed for your grow specifically. They do amazing work. They won't sell you anything you don't need, and they will hook you up. Code GrowCast for 10% off. Get that automation going now, folks. You will not regret it. You'll thank me later. Sustainablevillage.com, code GrowCast. Go grab those moisture meters and those Blue Mat watering systems while you can. Okay, everyone, let's get into it with Dr. Coco. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to GrowCast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in yet again today. Before we get started, as always, I urge you to share this show. Tell someone about GrowCast. Hit the little send icon on your podcast player and share this episode. Everybody loves an episode with Dr. Coco. Turn someone on to growing, you know what to do, and of course, see everything we're doing at growcastpodcast.com/action. There you can find the seeds and the membership and the classes and all the fun stuff we do. Today we have back on the line, as I mentioned, my good friend Dr. Coco, final tableist at poker tournaments around the SoCal area, and fine maker of pizza. Oh yeah, he's also a wonderful cultivator. What's up, Dr. Coco? How's it going, man?
How's it going? That's the best introduction so far, man. I like that. My poker skills and my pizza skills up there in front of the growing. I like.
Well,
it.
You know, you grow pretty good too. I'm just playing around. The members know what we're talking about. We did take a trip down to SoCal, me and producer Jay. Dr. Coco was an awesome host. He does make his own dough and pizza. It was delicious. And then we play a poker tournament that all three of us final table and producer Jay takes down. So I just want to one more time thank you for that awesome trip, Dr. Coco. That was just
that was a lot of fun.
Surreal.
Absolutely. I look forward to you guys coming back.
Totally bizarre that we were all sitting at the same final table. So
it
yeah,
was. Man. I mean, and Jay won. So hot tip to our man Jay there, taking down the grand prize in the poker tournament. It wasn't just like the three of us playing either. There was a bunch of other public people there. So
that's right. Yeah, it was so fun, man. So good times, listeners.
Indeed.
I do appreciate Dr. Coco coming on the show, talking about cultivation. I get questions all the time about our episodes, man.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. I love your audience. I love your community. I love jumping in your little Wednesday show and chatting with your people there. And everybody's always got great questions and sort of eager participants in all of this. So.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of following up today on questions that I have received around stuff we've talked about, kind of just like drilling down deeper into subjects that we've touched on in previous episodes. But before we get into that list, I want to talk to you about what you've been doing, man. You're working on some big projects down in the Southeast, right? You talked to us last time a little bit about this large-scale production facility. How is that going?
Yeah.
Where are you at with that?
They're finally growing now. Like any new sort of cultivation facility that comes online, you hit a lot of sort of hurdles and licensing issues and construction issues and plant-based issues and climate issues and all of that. So, they've been growing moms since June with the expectation at some point that we would be, cutting clones and flowering plants in like August or September, got pushed to November. And finally, I went out there and helped load the first room. So room number 1 with plants, with clones that right at the beginning of January. So those plants are now, mid bloom. The other rooms are getting loaded, and it's just been, interesting. This is a grow that I've been working on for over a year now, in the planning and thinking about plant count and plant density and, all of these issues. It's all coming to life now, able to actually see, I designed this grow with a really high density of plants, really short veg time because there's no plant count issues there. In the first room, things were getting settled and we vegged a little bit too long, probably. Those plants now are denser than we would want. And so kind of making adjustments there and thinking through about how to sort of refine that for the future rooms.
Even shorter veg time.
Shorter veg time and potentially lowering the plant count a little bit. We're only doing a 14-day veg from cloner to flip.
Jeez.
But the plants were significantly too big. So reducing that veg time, there's only so much you can reduce there. Plants still are going to grow during the bolt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that initial 2 weeks.
But it gives us a little bit more flexibility too. Had some issues with the moms and now maybe we could get away with, taking a few fewer clones and vegging still for 2 weeks or taking, the same number of clones and reducing the veg time and just seeing how, because they're also growing 8 different strains. So seeing how those 8 different strains are sort of growing differently. No, it's been a very interesting process. I've been really relieved and sort of satisfied with how a lot of it has turned out and how well certain aspects of that have gone. But of course, there's always things to sort of refine and to fine tune in that process. So,
well, I want to jump around because this question is lower on the list, but here we are. I want to talk about this short vegging time, man, because that was a subject that I got a lot of feedback on.
Okay.
One of the biggest beginner questions that I hear out there is, how much is this plant going to yield? How much is this tent going to yield? And I always say the same thing, right? Which is the more plants you have, the less veg time you need to fill out that canopy. And you should be thinking of it in terms of grams per square foot, really, is how you can kind of approach that. And that makes sense.
Grams per square foot is absolutely how we calculate harvest potential. Grams per square foot, assuming you have adequate lighting. You can also do, grams per light, so grams per micromole. So when we calculate based on lighting, we do it that way. When we calculate based on area, basically assumes that you have full lighting and you can do it that way. But yeah, we never, when we're running numbers like that in terms of sort of consulting for commercial cannabis farms, you never think really about return per plant. Now, some growers still think that way, but you can't really project because different plants, different sizes really makes a big difference.
Depends on how long you veg. If they only have one plant in the room, I'll have to say, it depends on how long you veg this thing. It's about that canopy size. And then it makes sense. It clicks in their head.
Right.
And when you can shave off 2 weeks out of the veg time, again, emphasizing this point, time is money. I don't care if you're a home grower or especially if you're a commercial cultivator.
Yep.
14 days that you shave off, that adds up to a whole extra run.
Think about it in terms of percentages. Just ours, we're on a 10-week run in the flower rooms. So we don't have a separate veg space. Plants go from cloner into the flower room and they stay there. If they veg for 2 weeks, then it's a total of a 10-week time period in that room, right? 8 weeks of 12, and then the 2 weeks of veg leading up to that. Mm-hmm. If we take a week off of that veg, that's 10%.
Right.
That's 10% of the time reduction. That's a significant savings.
Exactly.
Okay. You've cut your production costs by 10% because your production costs don't really relate to the number of plants. They relate to the amount of time those plants are in that room.
So true.
You increase the turnover time or you create sort of more flexibility in your schedule. And there's tremendous sort of advantages there. So that reduction of the veg time is huge. You can't really reduce the flower time. You can grow different strains or whatever, but most commercial operators, to be honest, grow 8-week strains. They don't grow 9 or 10-week strains, or if they do, they only grow them for 8 weeks in flower. But, you don't generally aren't able to shave time off of that much more.
Yeah, just by adding more plants. That'd be really nice if they went faster, if they had more buddies around them. That would be fantastic.
Right. To a certain extent, if you're under lit and you then go to fully lit, you can sort of speed that up, but only to a point, right? I mean, to 8 weeks, basically. And most strains need that 8 weeks to fully mature their flowers. So where you can save time is, I talk to growers that veg for 2 months. I talk to growers that veg for longer than 2 months. And they think that they're sort of growing efficiently, but you're not. I mean, if you're vegging for 2 months in an indoor grow, you're not growing efficiently, just straight up, period. You could be, improving your efficiency by reducing your veg time to harvest.
Yeah, they like the bigger plants and they like the bigger yields. And I will say the one wrench that gets thrown in here is plant count, right?
Well, yeah, plant count, definitely. So I consult with a big commercial farm in Michigan, and they veg for 4 weeks. And they need to grow plants that will occupy a little over 3 square feet because they're plant count limited.
That's so whack.
Yeah. And it makes them grow in an inefficient way.
It's so weird that someone would say you have to grow this way and it results in you growing 3 square foot plants just to follow the for no other reason than to follow the regulations. That's bizarre.
Right. And in the state where we don't have a plant count minimum, our plants aren't even 1 square foot.
Okay. Well, that's what I want to talk about.
And that's the debate now. Should we go up to giving them 1 square foot? At this point, they're getting about 2/3 of a square foot.
That's exactly what I want to talk about, Coco. Is there a point of diminishing returns here? So let's put plant counts aside for a second. And the idea is that the more plants you have, the less time you need to veg and fill that canopy. Well, I know you said, if I remember correctly, you were in 1 gallon pots at a certain point. Is there a point of diminishing returns? Why aren't we planting in 4-inch pots? You know what I'm saying?
Well, because the plant, like a healthy cannabis plant, no matter how small it is, say you just got a healthy rooted clone or like a healthy seedling with 3 nodes on it, basically. You flip either of those plants to flower and keep them healthy, especially in cocoa under high frequency fertigation. And they're going to be 24 to 36 inches tall if you don't top them.
Sure.
And they just are. It's not easy. You have to grow sort of in an inferior way. You have to do something like starve the plants or like torture the plants or something to grow smaller plants than that in sort of following my style of
it's going to get a certain size.
It's going to get a certain size. Yeah. And that's the lower limit. And I think we're pretty close to it at 2/3 of a square foot per plant.
So precise. In a 1 gallon. Was I right about that? You're in 1 gallon.
In a 1 gallon pot. Yeah.
Wow.
In a nominal 1 gallon pot. Be aware that, most pots aren't truly their weight.
Right.
And those are actually air pots or air pot equivalents. So
nice.
They're a little bit smaller than a true gallon, but they're considered the 1 gallon sort of size for that. You're only giving the plant like a little over 8 to 9 inches, like on a side, right? Like in an area, if you're thinking about this as a square, it's a square that's like 8 to 9 inches on a side. We're going to go basically from cloner to flip in a week. I think now is what it looks like 2 weeks was too long. 2 weeks, the plants were growing too big. So that, and at that point, plants are pretty small. They're going to have like 1 big cola, maybe 1 secondary branch that has, is notably a secondary branch, maybe 2, but most plants, basically just 1 cola.
Wow. So you just have these self-supporting kind of chunky field of 1 gallon colas.
Yeah, that's been one of the interesting things about watching our actual strains grow out, because some of them grow pretty lanky and taller and whatever. And you may need to have a scrog net or a trellis net set up on them. But yeah, you go from the cloner to flipping really fast if you just have enough plants. Basically, what I was saying, I'm like, okay, as soon as these plants start growing, we need to flip. because when you transplant them from the cloner into the Coco, they're gonna, be a little grumpy and have to kind of get their wits about them. And that takes a few days. But then they'll start, noticeably growing again. And it's like, okay, if you're growing that many plants, then you're going to have to flip. People have tried to go denser than that. I mean, I don't think that this is sort of the actual limit on density, but I think that there are diminishing returns past that. You're not giving your plants enough space to become plants.
And at that point, you're also, at a certain point, you're going to have a lot of labor intensive. Like if you get down to the 4-gallon pot, you got to now seed planting is like a whole fucking thing, getting those clones transplanted, like the labor shifts too. It's interesting to think about, man. So very, very cool.
No, well, that's definitely side of it. And if you were hand watering or doing anything like that, we'd never set this up. But that was something early on I kind of thought through about this. Is you want to reduce the labor costs. Plant training is a lot of labor. So growing little plants that don't need to be topped and trained and tied up and tied down and bent over and all of that. So that side of it's supposed to be sort of less labor. The more labor side of it is you have to grow more moms, have more cloning capacity.
True.
Have, a bigger cloner. And that day, we call it transplant day, where the plants go from the cloner into the pots. So it's a lot of work to do that day.
Man.
Anyway, I had the privilege of sort of being there, doing it the first time with that grow. And it was fun, but there's a lot of work to do. It's plant-based work. I mean, it's what we all do for fun.
I'm excited to see how this thing goes, man. And it sounds like that 1 gallon is the sweet spot with that high frequency cocoa fertigation, cutting down the veg times to a week. I love it, man.
Yeah, and loading that up. So the equivalent there, in like your 4x4 tent would be putting like 25 plants.
Yeah, that is quite
in
a
bit. 4x4 tent.
Well, wait, I guess not really. I mean, you think about 3 gallons, they're a square foot, so you could pack in 16. It's not that unreasonable.
No, I mean, there's space between the pots, if that's what you're curious about. The pots aren't touching each other by any stretch.
I'm just thinking about how many you could pack in of like, a 3 gallon.
The plants will be touching each other, after not too long. But now compare that to the grow I was talking to you about that I consult for in Michigan, where they have to veg for 4 weeks. They have a dedicated veg room, and it's actually a 2-zone veg room, because you have plants in the first 2 weeks of veg and you have plants in the second 2 weeks in veg in that room, because they're also on a 2-week rotation. So that is supporting 4 flower rooms that are on 8-week flowering cycles. So, and there they have a veg space that's as big as the flowering spaces, because it's got 2 zones in it, basically, right? And, if they didn't have a plant count, that veg room, I would have designed that room as a 5th flower room.
Right.
And
that changes the production entirely.
It would have changed. They'd have 5 flower rooms running in a rotation instead of 4, and, be producing sort of better, especially for the amount of energy that they were running in that grow facility. So that is not as efficient. If you have to sort of dedicate space, time, energy to just vegetative growth, clock's just ticking on that. And if you're looking to improve the efficiency, if you're looking to reduce your environmental impact as an indoor grower, the number one thing you can do is shorten your veg time.
I love it.
Get as much harvest out of a shorter grow. Because, man, it's the amount of time we're running these tents. It's the amount of time we're running our lights and our exhaust. And if you're running, DHUs or ACs or any of that other stuff, it's the amount of time, all that equipment that's got to go on. So if you're trying to make like the environmentally responsible choice, don't choose a style of growing that leads to longer veg periods. This is indoor horticulture, and our impact comes from the fact that we're doing all these things indoors.
Right.
So
anyone can benefit from that, right? I encourage any way anyone wants to garden. I do agree that this is how you become more efficient and get a better yield. People think of it backwards. How do I get bigger buds at the end? But you're saying get the same amount of buds, get it in less time. It's a really, really important mind state shift.
Exactly. Because like you started this saying, it's about the canopy size, right?
Yeah, right.
So if I got just my little 2x4 tent here, and I'm thinking about how to fill my little 2x4 tent, typically, because I like, spending time with my plants. I like training out the plants. I like splitting the apical dominance and all of that. And it's a little bit easier to only have like, say, 2 plants in the 2x4 tent. That means each plant needs to be 4 square feet, right? By the time it fully occupies that. And I end up vegging, 4 or 5, sometimes a little over 5 weeks, which still may sound fast to people. Remember, I've got this style of growing that's all about sort of growing really fast to reduce the veg time. If I went to 4 plants, if I went to 6 plants, if I went to 8 plants in there, and I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about, shit, why don't I just grow 8 plants? And like, if I did 8 plants, it's 8 square feet, I'd be able to flip them in 2 weeks from seed gets wet to 12 in 2 weeks, have a full canopy in there. And that shaves 3, maybe 3+ weeks off of my grow. And even if I've got to buy more pots or, get more drippers or sort of set up something on the technical side, on that side of it, saving those 3 weeks is a huge, huge savings.
Well, is there any, other than adding more plants and having like an optimal fertigation strategy, is there anything else we can do to shave that veg time? I mean, that's basically it, right?
Dial everything in.
Good question.
Dial everything in. Yeah. Make sure your light's appropriate. Make sure your climate's appropriate. Make sure that your fertilization, your watering, and all of those things are on point. But yeah, there's definitely faster and slower ways to grow plants. And frankly, this is why I love Coco so much, is Coco is really good at holding the root zone conditions optimally. So the plants don't ever sort of slow down. If you're staying on top of your fertigation, the plants never slow down because of sort of suboptimal root zone conditions.
Don't let them skip a beat.
They don't skip a beat, man. I mean, growers, if you really, like the first time you go to a high frequency fertigation through the bolt, through that quote unquote flowering stretch, if you got your game dialed in, the plants grow so fast, it freaks you out.
Yeah, that's what I like to see, man.
Yeah, no, once you've done it once and you're like looking forward to it, the next time you're ready for it. But I mean, the first time people they literally freak out and sort of doing that. So yeah, there's keeping your plants healthy, happy, light dialed in, climate dialed in, fertilization, watering, all of that dialed in.
And then leave them alone, right?
Yeah, leaving your plants alone. This is one of the other questions, right? About talking about not moving the plants too much.
Well, that's the second side of that equation, right? So you get the tent humidity and temperature perfect, and the automated watering system is taking care of your fertigation or what have you. Now your job is to, and again, like I am guilty of this. I'm never going to stop fucking with my plants and enjoying time next to my plants. And I know that I'll probably lose a little bit of growth rate, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice. But if I wanted maximum growth rate, your job is to not open that tent, right?
Yeah. It does kind of depend. I mean, there are trade-offs. So to a certain extent, opening the tent and being with the plants, you're breathing on them. You're giving them good carbon dioxide. True. You're making sure nothing's going awry. I really do believe that the old saying about, the best fertilizer is the footsteps of the farmer. So, being present with your plants is important. I don't really advocate, although I do believe in remote sensing too. So I have a camera in my tent, right? Where I can look at my plants without having to open.
That's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference, is being with the plants, scouting, things like that. That's always good. But when you just need to look, I mean, listen, they make these window ports for a reason. Now, for some reason, that's not good enough for me. I have to get in there and root around or something. I don't know. It's just what I do. But I noticed that when I leave town and Mrs. River takes care of the plants, and she only opens that tent to water it, and then she closes it. And when I come back from town, I noticed that that's the fastest growth rate that I have in that veg cycle. I notice it every time.
A few things. Like, yeah, if you leave the tent door open for too long,
All the
it's
time.
harder to keep the climate. They're not getting as much light because the light is spilling out into the room.
It warms me
And
like a lizard.
the climate swings are really the most dramatic thing, though. So it's the opening and closing of the tent that you got to realize inside the tent, usually the climate is different than outside the tent in both humidity and temperature. And so when you open that door, it changes rapidly inside the tent. Oftentimes the temperature drops. If it's like cooler in your room and it's hotter in the tent, the temperature drops and the relative humidity drops. And the plant's going to have to adjust to that. And it's not going to kill the plant. You're not going to notice a bunch of sort of plant suffering symptoms, but the plant's going to spend some time and energy over the course of the next hour or two making adjustments to that change in climate that happen. And those adjustments mean that it's not going to be growing as efficiently during
It's using up currency that it could have spent other places, whether that's, growth in veg or terpene production, for instance. And that's what I want to kind of lead into, which is I got a really interesting comment. Somebody was given pushback. We just did an episode on things to avoid in your grow. And one of the things was messing with your plants too much. And this person said, I don't think that moving your seedlings around is going to make much of a difference. And I thought to myself, first of all, I said, we're going to do a deep dive into exactly why you shouldn't reposition your plants. But does the stage matter, right? Like when would be the worst time to interrupt that cycle? A seedling, I feel like, has less surface area. Okay, so you think that basically the younger it is, the more resilient it is to these types of changes? Hey everybody, the FOOP is running a massive 420 sale. Buy two, get one free for everything they sell. Commercial growers, home growers, does not matter. It all starts $420 and you can get it at thefoop.com. You can get yourself your FOOP Newts, your FOOP Starter Pack, your Veg Pack, your Bloom Pack, Mist, Gel, Sweetener, whatever you like. Buy two, get one free. Now, of course, everything is organic certified by the Organic Materials Research Institute. FOOP Organic Biosciences are loaded with microbiology, all of the macro and micronutrients you need. Plus, they've got the clone gel, they've got the mist, they've got the sweetener. Free shipping on all orders over $70 and starting $420. Buy two, get one free for everything they sell. Now, always try code GROWCAST. You know to use that code at thefoop.com. This is where it's at, everybody. The big 420 sale. Buy two, get one free. Newts, starter packs, mist, gel, sweetener, whatever you like, whatever you're looking to try. Thefoop.com 420 sale. Use code GROWCAST and enjoy that buy two, get one free, everybody. Thank you to the FOOP and enjoy those sweet organic nutrients. Be healthy, go organic, use FOOP. So you think that basically the younger it is, the more resilient it is to these types of changes?
Absolutely. Try to do everything basically to your plants before the end of the bolt while they're still vegetatively growing.
Right.
Yeah, it's much easier to recover from injury. It's much easier to sort of shift around and reallocate energy for the plant. And generally, the consequences of it are not going to be as severe.
Wow.
After the bolt, like when the plants are putting most of their energy into developing and growing their flowers, if you cost them energy doing something else, then they're not going to grow their flowers as much.
Right. So that's when it's really detrimental. It's not just slowing you down in your veg rate. You're literally getting less terpene production because it's expending some sort of energy currency like ATP or something where it could have spent on the shit that you want it to do, the cannabinoid production and the factory that is the trichome head.
100% correct. There's a limited amount of energy that the plant's able to harness from the light. And like, I'm also sort of really sensitive to that side of it. Like, how much light can we give the plants? How much energy can we give the plants? And we're limited in time, right? We got like the aforementioned 8 weeks. And we got 12 hours a day, and then we got a PPFD limit, right? And so we really, and in the last few years, it's been interesting to see how the technology has allowed us to push those limits right up to the edge. Now you can get the PPFD limit like all the way across your tent, from corner to corner, basically. and run the lights right at that level. But that's the limit, right? You got 8 weeks at 12 hours at that PPFD limit. That's the energy you can deliver to the plant. And now what's it going to do with that energy? If you keep the plants happy and stable, they'll put as much energy as they can into growing big, beautiful flowers and producing cannabinoids. If you're stressing the plant out, then some portion of that limited amount of energy is going to be devoted to other things, and you can never get it back.
It's a zero-sum game and a limited time.
Yeah, you're
stressing me out. Stressing me out, man.
That's time limited.
That's how you should be thinking about it.
It's interesting I think that's an important thing to know.
Yes.
That, at that point, and prior to that, your plant is putting most of its energy into vegetative growth. And a lot of vegetative growth is redundant. Even, we talked about that at the beginning of the show, like how much can we cut this down? But, to be perfectly honest, in almost every grow, unless you're getting down to the point where you're vegging for like 4 days, that's like perfect or something like that. You might not be able to shave another day off of that. But a day's worth of growth during veg isn't going to be translated into your harvest, quality or quantity. But a day's worth of growth post bolt is going to reflect in your numbers in the harvest or in the quality of your cannabis.
That's a really good point, man. I fucking love it. So that was a really comprehensive answer. Again, why we shouldn't be messing with these plants too much or changing the climate too much, especially in flower.
And if you're going to do other things that, like, a lot of people do things right at the end of the bolt. And I don't want to go into a whole nother thing about don't strip your plants or all this. I'm not a big fan of that. But, if you are going to do something super stressful to the plants, despite sort of like the warnings against that, step it up a few days. Do it like on day 18, not day 21. People do so much stuff on day 21. Which is really sort of designed to be the last day of the bolt, right? The way the bolt basically happens is you got about 7 days of transition, and then you got about 14 days of bolt.
Right.
Once you flip them to 12-12. And day 21, I see all these like leaf strip at day 21 BS and stuff like that, right? That like do it on day 18. If you gotta do that, Coco, if that's like in your thing, because give them a couple of days of good vegetative growth after that to recover.
Okay.
I
gotcha.
Push it too close to that borderline where they basically stopped reproductive growth. And now they'd like to be devoting their energy to flowers, but you just injured them. And they're going to be devoting some portion of that energy to repairing the injuries. And I'm referring to leaf stripping or other kinds of pruning at that point.
Well, on that note of those solar panels and receiving that light, I do want to stress this, messing with plants one more time, because you mentioned it on a previous episode, but this idea of shifting plants, the idea that in nature, when you're outside in the sun, the plant can really control how much PPFD it's receiving by either facing away from or towards the sun, right? That makes a lot of sense. But here in the grow tent, especially under an LED, which is literally just dropping light in a square right down on your whole tent, essentially.
Light's coming from everywhere in a grow tent, because not only are there 1,000 different points of light in your LED array, but there's also the reflective walls, which are bouncing the light back. So,
well, wouldn't they mind being shifted less, or do you still not want to, for instance, take your pot and spin it in a 180 degree? Because you've said before, the plants position themselves very specifically, and it takes, a readjustment. What do you think about in a tent scenario? Is it less impactful, more impactful? What do you think?
In terms of how bad it is to do that, it's, there's going to be situations where it's really bad, and then there's going to be situations where it's only kind of bad. I'll definitely give you that. But I don't ever think that there's a benefit. And all of the reasons that growers talk about why they're doing it are really strike me to be like the wrong reasons. One of the most common reasons, I think, is because they're like, well, the plant's developing unevenly. So like there's more growth on this side facing the light than there is on this other side that's not facing light. So every few days, I'm going to rotate the plant.
Even out
every
the light.
day, I'm going to rotate the plant. So, 180 degrees to get both sides to develop at the same rate, which basically means both sides are going to be underdeveloped. and the plant's going to be sort of shifting back and forth a little bit, but neither one of those sides of the plant is going to be in the good light for the full flowering period.
So a plant in a corner, you don't want to spin that around to sun the other side. You would
advise you don't want to spin that around to sun the other side, because the leaves that are in the light are ready for light, and the leaves that are in the shade are not ready for light. So the first day that they get switched, the plant's just sort of reallocating its photosynthetic material so that those leaves that are now suddenly sun leaves are prepared to sort of handle the bulk of the photosynthesis. And the leaves that are now in the shade, they don't need to have all that photosynthesis or all the chlorophyll and everything sort of in an active state. And so you're just getting the plant to reallocate its resources and reallocate its energy in ways that are counterproductive to rapid growth.
Which is exactly what we're looking to avoid. So it's an interesting thought. I've heard that same thing. Another reason why someone might spin their plant is to get better access to another side.
For training purposes, I get that. Like if you got, 4 plants in a tent or whatever, and you can't like get into the middle of the tent, like look back at that side, and you're doing some pruning or some training or something. I get that.
It's not like the other side of this is
plants can tolerate a lot of these things.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I was just going to say.
It's not like it's going to outright kill them. And that's, I guess, my other message to growers is even if your plant looks healthy, looks happy, it doesn't mean that, it's not struggling with something. It's just, they're really good at sort of hiding all of their struggles until the struggles become very intense. So you can still dial things in and make the plant happier and increase the rate of growth, or increase the amount of the limited energy that the plant's able to harvest, and how much of that gets put into the kind of growth that we really want.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And this isn't like a huge detriment or anything like that. I don't want this to come off like I'm saying, we got to avoid this thing, but it's something that you need to consider. You need to have it in the back of your mind.
Well, if you're moving your plants for the sake of moving your plants, because you think moving your plants is sort of like beneficial to them, or you think it's really important to have your plant like be perfectly symmetrical or something like that, like I would encourage you to give up on those practices. But like, if there's legitimate reasons to move your plants, I don't want you to be like, oh crap, Dr. Coco said not to move. I mean, the plants are tough, man.
Exactly right.
Yeah, my wife takes a bunch of our house plants over to the sink to water them. And I've talked to her. I used to. I don't do it anymore because I've gotten used to this plant. I'm like,
nagging her.
I'm like, oh, they don't like that. Like, they're not going to like that. They'd be happier if you just let them be and watered them where they were. And like, she's like, no, but I mean, she's got her reasons. And it's like, I mean, it's certainly not going to kill the plants.
Yeah, it's well said. It's nitpicky, but I found it to be really interesting because, like you said, there's this constant reaction that the plant is going through based on all these parameters, right? Whether it's how open or closed the stomata is or how much nutrient it's uptaking, all these things. When you shift the position or shift the position of the light or crack open that tent and there's a rush of room temperature or cool air into the tent, those instant reaction processes start to change on the fly in real time all the time. So it's a very interesting point. I agree. I don't ever want to come off like
doing that. Plants are totally used to doing that outside. The climate shifts, the light shifts, all of that stuff is shifting around, and the plants are making adjustments to it. Some days it's wet, some days it's dry, some days they have plenty of water in their roots, other days they don't. They're constantly making adjustments to that, and they're growing slow. And when we put them in an indoor setting, right, where we're able to control all of these variables, the idea is absolutely not to recreate sort of the conditions they face outdoors, which is like a constant struggle. The idea is to give them ideal conditions and grow them as fast as we can, grow them as healthily and quickly as we can, and sort of turn that in. So, a lot of growers, the little rivets or the edges on the side of the road, that are like the rumble strips or whatever that are designed to tell you like you're driving off of the road. Well, you don't want to just like close your eyes and like drive by, hitting the rumble strips and be like, oh, I got to go back to the left. Okay. Oh, I got to feel it over on the right. I got to go back to the right. I mean, that would be, but a lot of growers are sort of driving their grows that way, where they're actually doing things until they see bad feedback in the plants. Right. And then they sort of step off, or they push a little bit in the other direction. They'll, like, for example, keep ramping up the light until they start to see their plants suffering under too much light, or like all these other things. And the message I just want to say is, your plants might look perfectly healthy. They're not going to show you any signs of suffering until you're way past sort of the point where optimal growth would have happened. So don't kind of like drive by feeling out the rumble strips, basically. Try to keep your grow more into the middle of your lane in a lot of these things. And
really
I think
good
a lot of
point.
growers would have better success.
They're poor communicators. They bottle up their emotions. They could use more calcium, but they don't start saying it until they really need more calcium. It's like somebody who's too polite, doesn't want to ask for a drink of water. It's like, no, just let me know.
Exactly. Until they're like
communicate.
Passing out. And then you're like, what's wrong with that guy? Oh shit, nobody gave him water in 5 days.
He's been at this party for 72 hours and nobody gave him water and he didn't ask. And now he's wilting over to terminal wilt. Now he has terminal wilt.
Right.
Shit.
Right. But yeah, it would really just be, it would be like feeding your children based on when they're like in their faces or whatever, you could tell that they were malnourished.
You look gaunt. Now it's time to feed you. Yeah, this isn't what we want to do.
Oh, I think Sally's looking a little malnourished. We'll give her some rice today or something. It's like, no, I mean.
Oh my goodness. You're totally right. So you got to dial it in a little further than that. You got to really get to know them, even though they're not very good communicators.
And you agree with me, right? You hear that kind of stuff where people are like, oh, my plants look healthy, or like, I keep pushing them until I see the plants wilt or something like that. EC is another thing that conventional growers are getting more and more fertilizer into their plants until they see the leaf tips curling up on themselves or get a little tip burn or something. It's like, you are so far past optimal fertilization and sort of water management at that point that the plant is no longer able to manage it.
I've certainly seen that sentiment before that, hey, if I got just a little bit of tip burn, it means that I'm maximizing it. You would push back against that heavily.
I push back against that.
You rebuke that.
Heavily. I mean, this is like Sally looks a little bit, like she's suffering from dehydration or from malnutrition or something. I mean, no, you don't want to ever get anywhere near that point where the plants are physically suffering. Keep in mind, right? Plants are designed, evolved to grow outdoors where the climate and the light, everything's constantly shifting. So they can handle a big range of things before they actually start to look like they're suffering. But they're not, the range that actually empowers like the best growth is much smaller than the range that allows plants to survive. So I think those are two really kind of important ideals too. That the consistency thing is sort of the other one that we're kind of talking around, but I often come at that topic of consistency. They just don't be changing things more than you have to on the plants. I mean, there are some things that require changing, and when they require changing, try to change them gradually. And other than that, the general rule that I follow is consistency. Keep things consistent. Even if, the EC, for example, in the root zone isn't perfectly optimal, the plant will adjust to that. And as long as it stays consistent, the plant will thrive there.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Keep things consistent, change maybe one thing at a time. A lot of growers I talk to, I did the same thing as last run. Well, did you change anything? I did this different and I did that different and I did this different and that different. It's like, well, maybe change one thing at a time there.
And there's almost always like 20 differences, even if it's just the time of year that you're growing. So your last grow was in the winter and now it's in the spring and your climate is different and you don't realize sort of that. And now you're growing different plants and you changed other things. And I love it. Growers always have like, oh, but I know it's this new additive that I'm using that created this difference. I'm like 57 things have changed and you're convinced it's this one additive or the lack of an additive or something else. So be cautious of that kind of, logical fallacy wherein we recognize patterns, but attribute them to the wrong causes.
That is a good point. And maybe to wrap that note, every run is so unique. The phenotype does include your environment. I don't care if you are in a tent. Like you said, my indoor run from summer to winter was totally different.
Huge.
And even though I'm indoors, it still changed the temperature of the room just a little bit. And you're going to see higher feeding and higher temperatures. I saw a nicer dry and cure because I was drying in my closet, not a completely climate sealed space. So in the colder months, I had a nice, longer, just slightly different, slightly better dry and cure. It's just little differences, man.
Absolutely. Almost everybody, I think, if you're honest, when you harvest plants between, say, November and April, you have a better dry cure for most growers, like in the United States, Northern Hemisphere stuff, right? Than you do on your plants that you harvest, the rest of the year.
July.
In the summer. Yeah, you harvest plants in July. And man, you're running your air conditioner then probably, but you're probably still in the low 70s, even if you're running it that cool. You're probably not. But man, in January, the room is probably getting into the low 60s overnight or whatever. It's just like, so that temperature difference makes a big difference during the cure, during the dry. So I really agree with you. There's so many things that change. And it's so hard to set up really good controlled experiments. But every grower thinks that, they can really easily identify what variable change that led to the different outcome in their specific case.
Hey, it happens, man. It's just like that poker hand that I tried to bluff you on. You know what I'm saying? I thought I knew what was going on. I thought I had a read. But then next thing you know,
you thought you read me. You thought I was bluffing. See now, but I had cards.
You did. Yeah. You had a pair. I know you had a pair. Okay, we're going off the rails here, man. This was an awesome podcast, though. I like this. And Coco, really quickly, what's going on at Coco for Cannabis? What's the next challenge before we wrap this episode? What's happening?
Well, I'm back trying to get some grow light videos going and doing videos. I'm talking about doing a new show and thinking about maybe doing something, like you do with Patreon. I don't know, but I'm thinking about, I want to open up sort of more access to people. So I've been thinking about doing like an Ask Dr. Coco show where people could, spend more time sort of discussing their questions. And a lot of it's because I have fun doing these kinds of shows with you. So I'm poking around and thinking about developing something there. We got the spring autoflower challenge is going to come up in April. So if you guys want to grow along with us, we're doing the spring autoflower challenge as our next community grow. And, come check out cocoforcannabis.com. We always do our grower love giveaways going on all the time now. Every month we're giving away a big light. So go check out our deals and discounts page and register for the Grower Love giveaway.
Oh, yeah. Loving the giveaways, man. Yeah, you got those big light giveaways people love. What do you got? Which light do you have up there? Do you have it listed yet?
Yes. So this month we're giving away one of the MetaGrow lights. We got the MetaGrow Fold 8 is the prize this month.
Nice. Go enter, everybody. I want to see a Growcaster take that down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, MetaGrows are cool lights. It's a big, 720 watt light, I believe. So more than enough power for all of our sort of tent-based growers.
Sweet.
And yeah, that's what we usually try to do. Get a pretty big prize up there. Runs for a good month. February is a short month, so it's that prize will be coming up pretty soon. It's super easy to register. We just and we've often put Growcast and Jordan River up there as we follow friends or follow different people or subscribe to YouTube channels and stuff like that to get additional chances to win those prizes. So that's why we call it the Grower Love giveaway, because it's a way that we're able to sort of spread the love back to a lot of members of the community, give a great prize out to somebody, and everybody just feels good about it.
That's wonderful. CocoForCannabis.com, everybody. Do all the things. Sign up for the giveaways. If this airs after that giveaway, there's another one up there. Go ahead and grab it.
There's another one. Yeah, there'll be another prize for March, and we've already negotiating a big prize for the April Grower Love giveaway. So
it's got to be big for 420. I like it.
It's going to be big, and it's going to be big is really the optimal word there for the April prize. But every month we do a pretty big light like this. So nice. Come check it out and participate in the Grower Love.
I love it. Love it, everybody. CocoForCannabis.com, of course. You can find us at growcastpodcast.com/action to see all the action. Get on the green list. It's free. Stay up to date on the emails. And we'll see you next time, everybody. This is Dr. Coco and Jordan River signing off. Wishing you all a wonderful day. Be safe out there, everybody. And grow smarter.
And grow with love, everyone.
That's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Come and see us, everybody. We've got events. That's right. The Cultivators Cup is sold out, but we've got Community Cup Oklahoma. You can come on down to Oklahoma for a wonderful day of education and a Cannabis Cup. growcastpodcast.com/community cup. And of course, Pestapalooza, the long-awaited IPM class with the great Matthew Gates, the world's leading expert on cannabis IPM. Now come on down to Pestapalooza. We have 2 dates right now, Long Island and San Diego. We're adding some more dates. Go and grab those tickets, everybody. It's an in-depth pest course that's going to come with a completion certificate along with a huge bag of goodies. You're going to get your hands on IPM in this gift bag. You'll have biocontrols. You get yourself a badass pair of goggles to help you scout insects in your garden, plus coupon codes for viroid testing, green stuff included in there, seeds. You know we do it right. It's a whole day of pest education, plus a fully catered after party and a massive gift bag. It is Pestapalooza. Do not miss it. Come on down, hang out with me and Matthew Gates. And if the information in this class just saves you 1 infestation and crop loss, it is well worth it, my friends. Come and learn from the best. Get yourself a badass, one-of-a-kind Pestapalooza gift bag and enjoy the party at Pestapalooza, baby. Check us out, growcastpodcast.com/classes. We're adding more dates, and I will see you there with Matthew Gates. All right, everybody, that's our show. I hope you are doing amazing things in your garden. Stay tuned. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.
So growing little plants that don't need to be topped and trained and tied up and tied down and bent over and all of that